Jerry Mallory here for SB Nation and PrivateTrade.com. This time last year, I did a video talking about the one position on the Lions that had me the most worried. And boy, was I wrong. It was the offensive line. I said with losses to Jeff Backus, guys are chairless, didn't like Stephen Peterman, but that's still three starters that played together for some time, all gone. Replaced by rookies, replaced by journeyman veterans. I thought this position would struggle the most, and I was completely off base. Well, we're going to be doing a series of videos similar to that. Positions and players, things that I'm worried about and things that I'm confident in. We're going to start off with the happy one, the positive one. And this is the position on the Lions that I'm ranking number one heading into the 2014 season. Now, in order to obtain my rankings, I had three criteria. I'm going to look down at my notes here. The first one is overall talent. I mean, clearly, you look at the collection of guys at this position. Look at their talent. I don't know if you play Madden or video games. If I'm rating each one of these, they're all highest cumulatively. Maybe not number one, but they're in the mix. The second one is depth. You can have a Calvin Johnson on your team, but if Calvin goes down, how good really is your receiving corps? Not so much. So depth plays a role. And then there's game time impact. Now you're going to say, Jerry, every position has a game time impact. Well, and when talking about ranking the number one position, game time impact comes into play when you look at some positions that don't quite have the impact on the game. For instance, if I was convinced that we had the most depth and the most talent at kicking, our punters and kickers, would I still rank them number one? Probably not, because game time importance for them, although a kicker and a punter is very important, would be rated much lower than, say, quarterback or your defensive ends. So those were my criteria. I had a formula, I mixed it up. I had calculators, I had supercomputers, I had ENIACs, I had Innovacs, I had Apples. Some of you probably don't even know what an ENIAC is. Do yourself a favor, look it up. But after all these collection of stats, the number one position for me is the running backs. To me, if I'm ranking a number one position, it is the running backs. Let's look at the criteria that I had. First and foremost, it's overall talent. There's a lot there. Reggie Bush, 1,000-yard rusher. The Tiki Barber treatment, as I like to say. I don't think he's getting any slower or getting any older because he didn't have a ton of carries early on in his career. So I think he'll have his most successful seasons in ages 28 to 33 or so, just like Tiki Barber did. So he's right in that mix. Joique Bell, awesome year. One of the best backups. Now he's had some injuries, but we think he's going to be healthy enough and he's going to contribute. But then there's Theo Riddick. Guys have been raving about him. They feel as though he can step right in and be that multifaceted player. And let's not forget, we also have Mikel Short. This is where depth comes into play as well. Overall talent is there, but there's depth as well. I mean, Calvin is better than any position player, but the receivers isn't the number one ranking because if he goes down, then Golden Tate moves up to number one, which is that's a little shaky. And number two is what? Ryan Broyles, Chris Durham. It starts to get really shaky. Even when you're adding in your tight ends as for receivers, depth for the running back is there. If Bush goes down, Bell plugs right in. It's easier to have more depth for running back too because you're only going to play one on the field at a time. Two at the most if you're doing two dual running back sets, but that's very rare. Receivers, you got two or three at a time. So by default, running back is going to have more depth. And then game time. Now, we know that we are a pass-first offense. But if you look at New Orleans, which we'll be modeling our offensive scheme a little bit similar to theirs now because of Joe Lombardi, they always had good runners. They always had a threat. The receivers and the quarterbacks were premier. But without the running game, look, they faltered. For many years, they were one of the top 10 rushing teams in the league. And so this is what we're going to be bringing now with our running back. So that's my number one. Who do you think is number one? Maybe it's the defensive line. Maybe it is the receivers, quarterback. You name it. It's your choice. Agree or disagree with me. It's all good. Just leave your thoughts. As always, I want to thank each and every one of you for watching. Till then, this has been Jerry Mallory for SB Nation and PrivateTrade.com.